Hello there, Lynx here. This irae interview with Kaziklu Bey. No unnecessary introductions, let's just get to the game today. I felt the drop fall on my cold body, I could also hear it. With just that, all my organs that were about to stop working suddenly revived and my blood gained enough vigor to storm through my veins again. It was a downright explosive feeling of resurrection. I quickly raised my upper body up from the floor. The first thing I saw was Beatrice. I was still in Cathedral, just as I remembered, and this one was looking at me with evident displeasure in her expression.
ここにいるのかと？そんなの大きなお世話です。私も好きで来たんじゃありません。本音を言えば、あなたが死ねば嬉しいくらいにこっちは思っていますからね。
Well, she was basically the same as usual, no charm at all. But at the very least, thanks to her, my head began working well enough for me to understand the situation.
そうかよ。まあ世話になったみてえだな。
From what I could tell, she gave me some blood. It was enough to save my ass moments before I withered away. Some went for Helga. She was weaker, but not gone yet, meaning that I could still do my thing.
やめてください。言ったでしょ。好きでやったことじゃないと。単なる命令。それ以上でも以下でもない。
嘘だな。
I said because I more or less understood the situation. For she was an idiot, she was just some pawn ready to act out someone else's will.
お前はたとえハイドリ秘境の命令だろうが、気に食わなければぶっちぎるやつだろ。つまんねえ演技してんじゃねえや。
He's right about that. She'd probably just tell him that she came here, but she was too late to save me. Beatrice wasn't lying when she said she wanted me dead, but something got her to save me regardless. However, I had no idea what.
どういうことだよ。
In response, Beatrice looked away and didn't give me a direct answer.
あなたのそれ、ルートビヒにやられたのでしょ？彼、ハイドリ秘境に喧嘩を売りましたよ。追撃命令が出ています。率直に、どう思いますか？
Hearing that somewhat surprised me, but a part of me could more or less understand it. He seemed like the guy who'd do that. Even so, there was only one thing I could say in response.
バカな野郎だ。
ええ、バカなやつです。彼がまともじゃないというのは分かったし、あなたを手玉に取るほどの力もある。でも甘いですよ、分かってない。ハイドリ秘境はそういう次元じゃないんだって、黒煙卓の全員が知っている。まして今回は、副資料閣下までもが乗り気になっているんです。考えてみてください。あの二人ですよ。
So true.
あの二人まで彼は敵に回したんですよ。
So true.
なんてバカなこと。
Her voice gradually began to shake until it became much like a shocked chuckle.
終わりですよ。もう絶対に助かりません。彼がたとえ何者だろうと、これは自殺行為としか言えないでしょうね。
As I silently but thoroughly agreed with her, Beatrice grabbed me by my chest. This time she roared with intensity.
だけどそれでも、それほど愚かな真似をしてでも、彼はクラウディアを欲したのでしょう。見積もりが甘い、自分の力を過信している。もしかしたらもう勝った気になっているのかもしれないし、そこはわからない。けれど、彼はクラウディアを渡さないでしょう。遠からず、ハイドリ秘境がどれほどのものだったかを痛感し、己の迂闊さを知るのは必然。ですが、絶望だけはきっとしない。彼女のために、彼は戦い抜くでしょう。それだけはわかる。
She then looked at me with anger burning her dumb eyes.
あなたはどうなんですか？ウィルヘルム・エーレンブルグ。クラウディアは、あなたこそ、生涯最後に光を与えてくれる相手だと定めたんじゃないんですか？
The words she'd hit me with left me slightly surprised.
お前、知ってやがったのか。
ええ。さっき少佐から聞きました。
Claudia didn't have much time left. Beatrice had only come to me because she became aware of that fact. Even if she didn't like the order or want to save me, she chose this path because it was best for Claudia. She then let go of my clothes and continued.
私は今でもあなたたちの関係が許せないし、あの子に死んでほしくない。
By the way, this is a ridiculous thing to say, right? I don't accept your relationship. Dude, if they want... I mean, I'm drifting off the game a little bit, but... saying something like that? Ridiculous. If two people want to be together, then fuck your opinion! Honestly, that's how it should be. Anyway.
でもそれは人間をやめてまで長生きしろという意味じゃないです。そんなバカは私たちだけでもうたくさん。
So she wanted her to die normally. That question of mine appeared on my face, and she responded by forming a faint smile and nodding.
クラウディアが自ら選んだ道の結果として病があるなら取り上げちゃいけないように思うんです。そんなの彼女の人生に対する否定も同じ。少なくとも吸血鬼になってまで生きながらえたいなんてことあの子は思わないし願わないはずだから。あなたは責任持ってクラウディアを救わないといけません。
If her life couldn't be saved, she could at least have a happy death. A peace that would take her to the sanctuary she so sought and prayed for. That was basically what Beatrice wanted to say.
でも正直言うとわからない。みんな私の勝手な思い込みだし別の見方もきっとある。たとえ嫌われても憎まれてもどんなに泣き叫ばれようとも断固死なせないと手を尽くすことだってそれは否定できない愛でしょう。なのでこれはあまり当てにならない私個人の女としての意見ですが、共に自分を欲してくれる男性が2人いてその間で揺れているとき選ぶ決め手になるものがあるとすれば多分
Slightly curious, I waited for her to continue, but she seemingly couldn't put their words together, and...
もういいか。取り込み中のところ悪いがね。あいにく時間が押している。具にもつかん話なら、そこらでいい加減に切り上げろ。
少佐
Zamiel was leaning against the open door and knocked on it while not hiding a bit of her irritation.
まったく。
This really had become an all-out war. What was originally just my and Claudia's problem had somehow blown up into something huge.
ああ、確かにしょうもねえ話だったわ。待たせて悪いな。そんじゃ行こうか。
あなたほんとしまいにはぶっ殺しますよ。大体さっきからいまいち覇気が見えないというかそういうところが心配で。
Here we go again, fighting between the two.
やる気ちゃんとあるんでしょうね。
当たり前だ。このボケなす。
Just like Zamiel had warned, no matter who we fought, we had to achieve an absolute victory. Not to mention that I already knew what I had to do, and I wouldn't waver on that no matter what.
クラウディアは俺のもんだ。俺が拾ったやつなんだから。俺が取り返しに行くんだよ。
Her fate was to become a great rose that would shine brilliantly as she perished within the light I'd grant her. So let's go and kick some ass. Some vampire ass. Following a dream that felt both long and fleeting, I regained my consciousness. We are with Claudia right now. Bastard. I looked up and saw his face. It was a visage so dark it seemed as though he was melting in the night sky, and it was so unnatural that I instantly knew race played no part. The whites of his eyes were painted crimson, while his pupils, on the other hand, looked whitened. Is that... maybe a bit. Neither of these were qualities a normal human could possibly possess. Frankly, it was an appearance that would make any ordinary person scream, but...
怖がらないのだね、私のことを。
ええ。あなたにそういう気持ちは感じません。
It was because I was half person, but because I could understand that he was being considerate of me. Not really. The gentleness in his eyes, as well as the warmth of softness of his arms, was more than enough proof of that. He was also carrying me as he flew through the sky, but not even that evoked fear in me. We were above a sea of clouds, yet I didn't worry about falling down whatsoever. I couldn't describe it well, but it almost felt like I was riding a large carriage, or perhaps a castle. Huh? No matter how high the floor they were in, as long as they were indoors, most weren't afraid of the height, and the sensation I felt was somewhat similar.
ではクラウディア、私に問いたいことはあるかね。答えられるものならば、何であろうと答えるよ。
That was another reason why I didn't feel any fear. My head was far too preoccupied with questions. He was aware of that and said those words because he was considerate of me. With that in mind, I didn't hesitate to present my first inquiry to him.
ルイ、あなたは一体誰なのですか？ルートヴィヒ・ヴァン・ローゼンクランツという人物は
本物のという意味ならば、あの家賃で死んでいる。
Hey. I half expected this answer and began to the unveiling of his true self.
私はあそこで長いこと眠っていたのだ。正確に言えば200年程度だがね。君らの感覚で測るなら長いと表現して問題あるまい。実際私としてもそこまで睡眠するつもりはなかった。
That is a long ass novel, by the way.
何せかなり久しぶりに眠ったのでね。この皮をかぶるにあたり、まずは形から入ってみようとしたわけだが、どうもなりきりが過ぎたようだ。目覚めの時に君と会うことができたのだから。
Bullshit. A smile appeared on his dark face. He basically just revealed that he was the anomaly at Katyn that Wilhelm and the others had talked about.
時代ごと、その時生きている人間から名や立場を拝借するのは古い友人から教わった処世術だ。私は寝室に踏み入ってきたルートヴィヒなる人物を殺し、彼の経歴をいただいたのだよ。
じゃあ、あなたの本名は？
Uh-oh.
ない。
え？
ただ、九段の友人は
Seriously?
メトシェラと呼んでいるし、私もそれを許している。そして今は、ルイという名が気に入っているね。君がつけてくれたものだから、今後はそう名乗るし、呼んでほしい。
He spoke as though he'd been granted a great treasure. This man bore the name Methuselah and had slept for 2 centuries. However, I was sure he was alive for dozens of times longer than that.
あなたの正体は闇なのですか？
Lee was mentally surprised, but his expression quickly became one of understanding.
なるほど。一種の血明というやつか。血の交換をするにあたり、私の記憶が君に流れていたわけだね。気恥ずかしいが、ここは手間が省けたと考えよう。ああ、その通りだよ。私はそういうものらしい。
そして、自分の子供である吸血鬼の真似事をした。
しかり、必要なことだったのでね。
Eh?
君を死なせないためには、
He'd lived for what some would call an eternity and had now sought a soulmate to be his opposite in his life cycle. But even if he found the right person, they couldn't live as long as he did, so it was necessary for him to bestow them a means of prolonging life. Okay. With this, it was proven that dreams were real, and it now made perfect sense. Yes?
お願いだから、どうして自分がなどと言わないでくれよ。私の記憶を垣間見たなら、おおよそ理解はしているはずだ。私にとって、君は無二の。
光だったと。
そうだ。あの家賃で君の魂に私は触れた。故に目覚めた。吸血鬼としての皮をかぶっていたからね。その外装を瞬時に無力化されては飛び起きざるを得んよ。そしてそんな真似ができるものは光以外にありえない。黒煙卓の連中は状況を不思議がっていたようだが、真相は何のこともない。君が視覚者だったというだけさ。
Back then, the ones within his darkness were Lisa, Beatrice, Wilhelm, myself, and the true Ludwig. According to Louis, upon seeing the light, he'd killed Ludwig, who was separate from the rest, and became him. That could only mean that Ludwig was the mysterious corpse in the coffin. Louis had also said that he'd taken the man's personal history, and I was sure that he didn't mean he was merely acting as him. Louis had perfect knowledge of the modern age, which was proof that he'd robbed Ludwig's whole existence from him. What a piece of shit. Vampires were fully capable of that, so their origin, their primordial god, ancestor of the dark, could do it with ease. I knew it well, as I had experienced the miracles and gifts that the magic of blood could bestow firsthand.
それでも君はなぜ自分が選ばれたのか不思議かね。
いいえ、そこはこの際問いません。
As incomprehensible as his over-evaluation of me was, I had other questions in my mind. For example, I still didn't know the details of how I banished the darkness back in the cave. Still, there was something else I wanted to know more than all else. It was perhaps my most immediate concern.
私は吸血鬼になるのですか?
That was more important than anything else. My simple question received an answer just and concise.
そうだ。
He nodded and looked at me with certainty in his eyes, as though it was already determined.
だったら私はあなたの伴侶じゃなく奴隷です。
Yep.
だって吸血鬼の親子とはそういう関係なのでしょ?
Yep. You're right there.
おとぎ話のような幻想だけど、あなたはその皮をかぶってらしく振る舞ったわけなんだから。つまりなら私の意志は一体どこに?
Yep, the bastard is lying.
あなたに操られるだけなのですか?
Would I become like those poor undead bucket cutting? I asked him that, and he responded by shaking his head.
違うよ。私は君を縛ったりなどしていないし、むしろ逆だ。解き放っているつもりだよ。なぜなら、吸血鬼とそのなりかけは、自分の感情や欲望を制御することが難しくなる。特に後者は顕著でね。故にこの数日間、君がこれまでと違う状態だったのは事実だが、別に操られていたわけではないし、人格が変わったわけでもない。
She did act strange sometimes, though.
ただ、普段より数割増しで素直になっていただけだ。
The meager joy, anger, embarrassment, numerous other impulses. He claimed that all the feelings I expressed or couldn't even be aware of had begun to get a strong reaction out of me.
だから解放?
そうだよ。それは君の言う半分じゃなくなるということではないだろうか。戸惑いはしただろうし、後悔もしただろう。はしたないと感じることさえ もしかしたらあったのかもしれない。だが、それこそ君の求めていたものではないかね。制御できぬ思いの本流。振り回されることはあっても、やりたくないことはやらないだろう。
And that was the reason why I had a good impression of Louis and let my guard down to him. Why I got mad at Wilhelm for treating him roughly. And why I felt a craving for blood back then.
そうした意味で、君の意志は君のものだ。私が操ったわけではない。
I wouldn't be so sure about that. I mean, I don't trust the guy.
吸血鬼にその手の主従関係があるのは否定せんがね。そんな命令は決して下さんし、そもそもできんよ。
Are you really saying the truth?
なぜなら君は光だから。
Huh?
それを前にあらゆる闇のものは無力となる。
But yeah, if you were powerless completely, wouldn't that mean you wouldn't be able to change her into a vampire and so on? Yeah.
だけど
There was a contradiction in his words. If he saw me as light, then why did he turn me into a creature as dark as a vampire? Both of us were the inhabitants of the night.
いくら私を生かすためでも心を解放するためでも太陽の下を歩けなくなるなら意味なんかない。あなたは私から光を奪ったのですか？答えて、ルイ。
I lost dozens of years of my life exactly because I wasn't satisfied with the light I couldn't have and sought it regardless. In that regard, if you want to prolong my life, it was true that keeping me away from the sun was a reasonable course of action, but I just couldn't agree to it.
だってそんなのは私じゃない。私の今までを否定している。あなたが光と定めたクラウディア・イエルザレムではなくなるんですよ。分かってるんですか？
もちろん100も承知だよ。言われるまでもないことだ。
He just doesn't care. His instant nuisance were left me dumbfounded. He lovingly watched my reaction before continuing with a whisper.
白い夜。覚えていないか。この世界には光と闇が同居している地もあるんだよ。そして君もそれを見たいと言ってくれた。
With that, I remembered the ideal land he talked of.
そこでなら闇は光と共存できる。光もまた闇を宿して光のままに生きられる。私が君から奪うのは死という暗黒。それだけだよ。他には何も望まない。君は君のままであればいい。勝手な真似をしたのは認める。押し付けだと言われても否定はできん。故に愛してくれという気もないさ。そんなものはいいんだよ。
How come it supposedly doesn't matter?
ただ、私は君を愛していると知ってもらうために死を奪った。そのことだけを理解してくれ。私から言える事実は以上が全てだよ。クラウ。
He concluded as if anticipating the time we would spend until the end of days. I snapped him back to him. I couldn't find the words. It was true that by becoming his soulmate, I would have all my wishes fulfilled, and I couldn't deny that he'd guided me to this. However, for some reason I felt an uncomfortable sensation in my heart. There was no fault in his confession, but a part of me was unable to accept it. Despite him making me more honest with myself, I actually didn't like something about the whole situation. Was there some feeling inside me that I wasn't aware of until I met him? What was it for? I couldn't tell. I utterly failed to figure it out, and yet I couldn't ignore it either. I felt like I would be trying to figure it out for all eternity, but then...
まったく無粋な奴らだ。忠告はしたというのに。
Lee was looking behind him. Once I followed his gaze, I finally realized what he was staring at.
あれは
Yeah, The feeling tormenting my heart was,
しばし眠れクラウディア。目が覚めたとき、そこには白い夜が広がっていると約束しよう。
待ってルイ、あなたは。
Unable to finish my sentence, I sunk into him, into the transient darkness that would lead me to the white night. The location was not far from Norway's Svalbard, 75 degrees north latitude, 9 degrees east longitude. Like a raging wave, it was giving chase to the Black Star. Raging wave described both its movement and the effect it left behind. While advancing with speed greater than anything else at the time, it also left immense waves in its wake. They thundered upward, going as far as severed 100 meters in the air, and there then seemed to be an end to them. The Arctic Ocean was literally shaking as though bombarded by an endless airstrike. On its way there, the thing that launched tsunamis in all directions created enough energy to match the most historic of earthquakes. It was a calamity that could bring some of the worst ruin ever known. Despite that, it was only the beginning. After all, the thing was merely running. Its arms, which could grasp a mountain, were simply hitting the surface of the ocean. Once their right reached the bottom, it switched to the left, then back to the right, and so on. It was nothing but a repeat of that action. The shining golden gigantic skeleton that seemed to have escaped the realm of myth was merely advancing forward as though crawling on the water. It was a sight that would rise those with normal nerves of their sanity, and yet it was very real. So cool! The thing was Gladsheim Weltall, the fifth universe of gold. It was Reinhard Heydrich's creation figment and a soul comprised of those that passed on in the war, making it much like the Legion of Hell. Its unmatched majesty and might was witnessed by countless individuals, and it caused an uproar so great that the word chaotic seemed too weak to properly describe it. But what did that matter? Secrecy, hiding, ridiculous. This was the mark of a hegemon. There was no reason for him to humble himself for the general public. A hegemony wasn't true until it ascended above concepts such as modern common sense and values. It was an absolute law of a new world that consumed and recolored all there was. The idea that those could escape the common world and society had to walk in the shadows was defeatist nonsense. They couldn't win after all. They hid precisely because they would lose if their truth became known to the masses. This applied to the soldiers, criminals, and, yes, magicians and those who people saw as inhuman. Despite claiming to know more truths about the world than the common men and acting as if they were above the rest, they were actually afraid of earthly society and ran from it. You could almost hear the mystic legion sing the will of its master. Such contradiction, what weakness, you sending yet lovable frail ones. Watch as I destroy both society and what lies behind it. I shall not be defeated. Cry tears of reverent joy and extol the dies irae. Sieg Heil Victoria! My world shall be triumphant. Oh, let me grant you the sweet joy of war. May all of creation be painted with the law of strife. The king of Valhalla, the man of gold, stood atop his castle with eye-pleasing beauty and an archaic smile on his visage. He lovingly gazed at the darkness ahead.
追いついたな。さて、それでは海戦と行かせてもらおうか。存分に振るうがいい。メトシェラ殿よ。Kingに愛を与えよう。
His refined tone contained not a hint of barbarism. The difference between him and the blood-loving berserker was far too obvious. Just as he claimed he would be granting nothing but love, to him that and destruction were not by synonyms. Therefore he had no fear or hesitation. Hegemon that he was, he would merely follow his overflowing passion and destroy all there was. As for celebrating that fact, the magician at his side lightly nodded.
彼は私にとって古き友だ。せめてその生涯に光となる滅びの花を咲かせてほしい。とはいえ、油断めさるなよ。率直に申し上げて、これまでとは格が違う。概念としては想像より半歩上の領域だ。あなたはこの城を3ヶ月近く展開している状態だが、 あちらは確かなところでも3万年は続いている。
30,000! What the hell?
自らの意志でそうなったわけでもないようゆえ、単純な比較はできんだね。ともかく極めて原始的だ。あまりよって私から助言できることもさほどない
が。あれは愚道か、それとも波動か。
Reinhardt cut his friend's words short and spoke what he wanted to know. The entirety of the night and dark seemed to possess qualities from both of those paradigms, or perhaps it was better to see it as unlike either of those. The fact that it encroached with the setting sun made it seem like a hegemony, but its territory was more or less the same as at all the times, which was closer to transcendence. On the other hand, when exposed to the law of light, it usually backed away and opened the path. Transcendence was too obstinate and hegemony was too aggressive to support such a quality. The word primeval seemed highly fitting, as it seemed akin to the primal chaos in how it danced around definition. As for acknowledging that, Mercurius formed an implicative smile.
わかりませんな。きっとそういう種類分けが生まれる以前のものなのだろう。原生生物を捕まえてオスかメスかと言っているのに等しい。だから先ほど申した通り、あまり常識で計らぬことだ。不明なものを理屈にはめたがるのは文明人の悪い癖で愚かな行為と私は思う。単純な話、メトシェラと対するならば戦術的には大きく2つ。
Oh, interesting, interesting. The magician raised a finger and whispered as if caressing the dark.
自ら理屈にはまってもらうよう促すか。
すべてを力技で消し飛ばすか。なるほど。大方理解した。せいぜい楽しませてもらうとしよう。あるいはここで私の全力が出せるのならばそれでよい。
Perhaps.
できずとも。
He cut his words short and raised a hand before continuing as though to inspire the army waiting behind him.
果てにさらなる戦が約束されていると信じよう。期待しているぞ、カール。
慎んで添えるように努力いたそう。
The two looked at each other and grinned before.
総員出撃。
Reinhardt lowered his hand. With an erupting fighting spirit, the Legion of Gold let out a war cry. Thus began a battle that would decide the outcome of another great war. The reigning hymn of strife roused the hell to overflow and rush toward their great foe. The dead that made up of a mystic castle began separating from it and rushed at Ludwig like an avalanche. There was a lot of infantry, but that certainly wasn't all. There were tanks, fighter aircrafts and even battleships as well, none of which ceased to function merely because they were in midair. The limbless float of undead formed a vast river, while the fighters flew as they were created to the other war machines charged the enemy while crushing their own army. As for to assert their position as the final supreme arcane, they created a nightmarish sight as they advanced on the dark divinity. The sight trampled over all common sense, and the mystic battle that would follow would truly exceed all logic and limitations of reality. As unnatural as it was, however, it was still a war, and as such it obeyed certain relevant philosophies. One of them was the fact that ones acting as vanguards were always the elite. Farin... Oh. Okay.
そびえ立つその城も無人となって砕けるがいい。
Using the river of corpses as his trail, Wolfgang Schreiber dashed as he let out a muddied howl. As the one who boasted the greatest speed, Albedo surged ahead of everyone else, as for it was his privilege. He was followed by Machina and batteries, creating a vanguard lineup no one could find fault with.
映 我を誇る神々の栄光、神々の一族、喜びのうちに滅ぶがいい。
This was proven by their abject lack of negligence. They went all out from the get-go. Schreiber's speed grew higher and higher until it became 1,000 times greater than the speed of sound and beyond. Not a soul in this world was capable of catching up to him, even if he faced light instead of the dark. He'd break the laws of the world and outspeed even death. That was the nature of the beast's craving, and it was now unleashed.
ブリア、ニブルヘイム、フェンリスボル。
He was the fastest, none could catch him. The infamous wolf became a peerless shooting star that pierced Ludwig. But... yeah, he did that again, of course.
で
Methuselah remained unfazed. Even the hole Schreiber had punched through his chest quickly closed. Note that description was off the mark. After all, this entity had no physical body.
早いのは分かったが、それでどうした？何か意味があるのか、小僧。
All high and mighty, huh?
そんなものを競う気など、私は花から持っていないぞ。
Schreiber continued attacking even as Ludwig talked. During his creation figment, the beast was too maddened to hold a proper conversation. He wished to be faster, to outspeed anything, to matter the cost. He sought to achieve velocity that would make him absolutely untouchable. That was what he wished for his entire life, and it was his only weapon. By relying on his unmatched speed, he gave his all to gouge, cleave, and tear his enemies apart. That was exactly what was happening to Ludwig, but all the wounds he was dealt instantly regenerated, which many would think impossible. After all, the creation figment created a rule. It was power that made one's ideal pulverize all common sense. So obvious ideas such as the indestructibility of darkness shouldn't have applied to Schreiber. In fact, Obed might have actually been damaging him, but...
総じて浅い。ありの一決にもなっておらんわ。
His scale was too vast, his history too dense, meaning that Schreiber severely lacked the firepower to damage him. Even so, by no means did that make it fair to assume Schreiber was weak. A single knight was as large as half of the world, and Methuselah had accumulated a countless number of them. No matter how quick the fang, there was a limit to the area it could tear. Tooth indeed, there was no denying that Albedo's acts were akin to an aunt's to him. That's when the others come in, right? It's funny how the voiceover is Japanese. We get the German incantation and then English translation. Like, dude, speak in German for that one at least. Come on. What was there to do then? The answer took the form of the second vanguard.
私は愚かであなたのお役に立てなかっただからあなたの炎で包んでほしい
It was Beatrice. She dodged while being spit second only to Schreiber's ass. Her body was gradually surrounded by lightning. There was more to come, however.
さらば輝かしき我が子よ
Zamiel. Eleanor was supporting her subordinate from behind. Next to her, there was a so-called railway gun. Fully operational, it released a humming sound akin to a growl.
ならばいかなる花嫁にも劣らぬように最愛の炎を汝に送ろう
我が槍を恐れるならばこの炎を越すこと許さぬ
Her blade, body, soul, all of it became the lighting of the war god. It was a rule she'd craved and prayed for so that she could shine upon the darkest battlefields. She wanted to make sure none of their comrades would lose their way under the smoke-filled bloody sky. She wanted to help her beloved superior's ideal shine brilliantly. She wished to become a dark, rending flesh, Flush. A battle maiden who would lead the heroes to glory, to Valhalla.
ブリア
That pure-hearted prayer of hers was her world, riding the fire from the railway gun behind her batteries, killed highs and made her transcendence shine. The dark wasn't something you crushed, it was something you banished, whose an explosion of light could truly diminish the darkness. Light and fire bloomed and danced in the air, beautifully tearing Methuselah's kingdom asunder. Uh-oh. However, light and dark were but two sides of the same coin. The stronger the light, the deeper the darkness. They heard a sound akin to something crawling out of the ground. Fittingly, it came from below. Just like what happened with Gladsheim's roar, they were hit by their very own powers. Torrents of lightning and blaze burned hundreds of the castle's legion. Beatrice seemed to have expected as much, so she was able to evade just in time. Same went for Schreiber. As she grit her teeth in frustration, Ludwig appeared before them, looking as though nothing had happened to him. Will it end fighting fire with fire? You know, Wilhelm going there. United infantry volley fire, piercing bayonets, stabs, fiery tank and battleship shelling. None of it seemed to work. Even after the Messerschmitt formation drowned him in machine gun fire, and Junker's Jew 88s repeatedly bombed him alongside Henkel He 111s, the darkness remained supreme. By the way, can I just mention quickly the battles in the irae games? They are fire. Like, so good. Nothing they tried had any effect on him.
だから私は言ったのだ。追ってこようが益などないと。無駄な真似をさせるなよ。なるべくならクラウディアを悲しませることはしたくないのだ。彼女は清い女性だから、たとえどのような外道であっても、人の死には心を痛める。
As Ludwig spoke his unwillingness to fight, his tone grew dense with resignation. He had already given them his last warning and was fully aware that adding anything more to it would change nothing. At the very least, Beatrice and Reinhardt would continue the fight no matter what.
戦で身を立てようとする輩はいつの時代も理解に苦しむ。お前たちは戦乱を闇と言い、それを制す栄光とやらの虜だが、順序を顧みたことがないのだろう。はじめに闇ありきではない。妙理を求めるお前たちの船舶さこそが死産決我を築いているのだ。
According to many warriors throughout the ages, heroes always try to become the light, but banish the chaotic darkness, but Ludwig claimed that it was the other way around. The dark never gave birth to light after all, so the ones who were bringing the wars were none other than the fools who were baited by the light of glory. They want to shine so much that they plotted and designed a fitting stage, a world sunk into darkness. He's kind of right. And yet Ovid failed to realize that their very warped light had created darkness just as distorted.
そんなものは醜い自作自演の陶酔だ。破壊の愛だと。なるほど、確かに壊れているな。よくもそこまで冒涜的に狂っていられる。本来善も悪もないものに、お前たちが欺瞞を施してきた結果をこれから教えてやろう。
Suddenly the night around Methuselah became heavier. There was a visible difference in darkness surrounding him. The shapes birthed by the darker hue were akin to fangs of a beast.
私は醜くなってしまった。
You were from the very beginning, to be honest.
お前たちがそう望んだのだ。私は怖く、獰猛であれと。
The ones who defined the dark as something detestable were humans. Their instincts taught them to fear it, and thus they became synonymous with dread. War, calamity, madness, death. All that was evil and menacing. In a sense, those things were akin to mankind's predators. Thus Ludwig was an amalgam of all the phenomena that ravaged mankind. He had nearly countless means of murder, both physical and mental. The reason he hadn't launched many attacks so far was surely because he hated the way he was. He felt as though he'd been defiled. Lamented the fact that the darkness, neither evil nor good at its core, had become such a ravenous poison. Therefore he found showing such sights of him to be unbearable, just like when he donned the skin of a vampire. He did not do so willingly. Still, given the situation, there was no room for such restraint.
お前たちのような輩こそが忌まわしいと自覚してから死ぬがいい。闇の何たるかをわからん者は虚無も同じだ。無に帰れ。
Whoa, that was loud. The horde of jaws that spawned behind him gnawed loudly as they charged toward Glatzheim. A war for a war. It was as if he was showing the folly in their logic. Beatrice responded by further enhancing her body-turned lightning and intercepting the enemy. No matter how menacing its form of the dark was still the dark. None of those claws of fangs could reach her if she merely shone brilliantly enough. That logic was sound, however it only truly applied when the scale was the same of both sides. Her lightning was eroded, painted over by the dominion of the darkness. Soulful as it was, her light was enough to make the encroaching jaws fade. This was all because each and every one of Ludwig's fangs had 100 days worth of darkness compressed in them. The density of the phenomenon was on a different level. After all, no one shut away in a cavern could light up the outside by merely turning on a light bulb, and due to similar logic, Beatrice and her light were crushed. She screamed and released a splash of blood, for she'd avoided a direct hit. The darkness had taken her entire left arm, and it didn't end there. The Legion of the Night continued to push forward. Schreiber was able to avoid them all, but the Battle Maiden, being already damaged, was incapable of fighting back. If she was swept away by the second wave of darkness, her light would be extinguished, and if not, even her bones would remain. Elena tried to support her with more artillery fire, but alas, that was enough. Methuselah darkness would soon devour Beatrice whole. However, right before that happened... Ugh. Something wrought of iron interfered. It pulverized the fangs of dark in but a single hit, making their curtain fall upon them. That was the first win for Glatzheim's side. Their hopeless situation was changed with the power of a single man. Grimacing in pain, Beatrice looked up at his back. He didn't say anything, but he was without a doubt standing there with the majesty of a champion. He'd forgotten his name and desired only to die in the greatest of battlefields. And that was what made him the manifestation of death, or rather, the end. That he was. His craving was to make the curtain fall on his Volsung saga, and its effect as a power was to end all phenomena, regardless whether they had a shape or not. Any story with any sort of history would have an ending, and his Deus Ex Machina instantaneously and forcefully moved the story to that conclusion. Not only could it affect living beings and buildings, it could also end fire, lightning, and even thoughts and concepts. Being struck by his punch meant having your history ended, and not even the Dark Divinity was an exception. A single punch would shatter him and make him vanish.
Oh. これはまた驚いた。危険な奴がいるのだな。
He's awesome. Ludwig sighed in both wonder and shock as he instantly understood the nature of Machina's power. Since death was mankind's greatest darkness, it was difficult for him to realize.
確かにお前なら私を撃てるのかもしれん。しかしどうだ。 闇夜を終焉させる所業というのは果たして是なのか非になるのか。私が消え去った後の世など自分でも想像できんがどう思うね。
俺の知ったことでは
ない。His voice was silent, but his answers were concise and clear. He hadn't a single hint of doubt regarding himself. If he'd only pulverized the concept of personified nature, Ludwig would simply lose his arcane and return to mere darkness like the rest of his kin. That would be an appropriate conclusion, but Machina's fists would surely go beyond that. He would certainly end the very existence of darkness itself, and it didn't take much to know just how badly that would damage the worldly order. And yet the man wasn't concerned about or interested in that whatsoever.
夜が消えて、だからどうした。俺に砕かれるものならばいつか終わるものなのだろう。ならば今消えて何の不都合があるという。
Nice. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The man was dead to begin with. Since all creation would eventually return to nothingness, he had no qualms about creating the void, and that was the very reason why he was the transcendence of the ending.
なるほど。ではお前に一ついいことを教えてやろう。
The darkness surrounding Ludwig underwent another huge change. It was different than the last one because of its numbers and regularity. If the first attack was an onslaught of beasts, this was far more like a line of troops standing ready to fire. In the sky there was a geometrical pattern of unmatched accuracy. Standing in front of it, Methuselah continued. I understood everything you just said.
つまりお前のようなものには何の値打ちもないのだよ。消えて不都合がない存在とは要するにお前だな、黒騎士よ。
Suddenly, the elaborate muzzle behind him fired a single gathering of darkness. It burst right before Machina's eyes, becoming spherical and encircling him. Then he began to shrink with the purpose of crushing him. Of course, Machina wouldn't have been Nigredo if he was incapable of handling such a trifling attack. His all-shattering fist pulverized the dark prison. It was an obvious result, and Ludwig had expected it. And exactly because he knew this would happen, he didn't end it there. Soon came the second one, then the third, fourth, fifth, etc. Like caseless gunfire, the darkness shot at him completely. For Machina was shattering each and every one of them, the number of spheres greatly outmatched the speed at which he could swing his fists. His situation was the equivalent of being continuously enclosed by countless paper-thin walls. He could easily break them, but he was incapable of ending all the separate spheres simultaneously. If Schreiber's weakness against Ludwig was his lack of destructive ability, Machina's weakness was the limit of his speed. Everyone watched dumbfounded as he was sanctioned off by the pitch-black spheres of darkness that showed no sign of ending. There were hundreds, thousands of them. No one there could count them, but the firing was done in only about 10 seconds.
50万だ。1400年に相当する夜をお前には与えよう。
Machina was probably still fighting within the dark engulfing him, but no one outside could know his state.
その一つ一つに食われぬまま自慢の幕引きを続けられるか。いいや、仮にできたとしてそこから出られるのはいつになるかな。
To be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if he could just erase them all with one swing. But well, Machina basically had to throw 500,000 Deus Ex Machinas and had to do it while surrounded by a crushing darkness, unaware of which way was up, down, left or right. He could easily shatter all of them many condensed nights simultaneously by simply landing a hit on their origin, Methuselah, but that was exactly why Ludwig discarded the necessary amount of darkness. Just he said that it was a millennium and 400 years worth of nights. 500,000. As such, Machina had no choice but to destroy them separately.
数ヶ月、数日か、あるいはお前なら数時間で突破できるのかもしれない。しかし私は知っているぞ。お前たちのそれは長続きせんのだろう。水銀の薫陶を受けたとはいえ、人間一人の意志でいつまでも異界を持続することは不可能だ。
Well, don't be surprised, man. Machina and Schreiber's prayers, their cravings, both changed their very selves into other worlds. Since they were the transcendent snipes, their influence on the current world was limited but wasn't entirely non-existent. They counted as foreign entities and thus couldn't last long. Things would be different if they'd ascended to the stage that made them gods, but that wasn't the case, so they had their limits.
実に際どい天秤だろう。幕引きを使えなくなればお前は死ぬし。
Oh yeah, now that I think about it, the events of this game are before the first game, so... They were... Some of the characters were not in a certain place yet, I guess. Anywho. He paused and formed a smirk before continuing.
どのみち数時間もすれば戦い自体が終わっている。
He lightly snapped his fingers as if to shoo away back, making the dark prison keeping Machina fly away like a bullet. It went toward the end of the visible sky, beyond the horizon. With that, Machina was forced to withdraw from the battle. Just as Ludwig had said, even if he returned to battle, the battle would be long over. Not only that, but as one of Gladsheim's residents, Machina shared his lot with Reinhardt. He was destined to vanish if his master faced defeat. Thus, no matter which angle you look at it from, Nigredo had definitely dropped out to the fight, meaning that they'd lost what might have been the only card they could play against Methuselah. Sherber was still attacking him, but just like before, damage he dealt was negligible. Beatrice was injured while the rest were greatly fatigued. Rosalka had exceptionally bad compatibility with him. Her words let her manipulate shadows, but when facing Methuselah, doing so was nothing but suicide. Her actions were limited and there was little she could do about the situation. Same went for Lisa, Spinne and Kain. None had enemies that would prove effective against such a fearsome foe. The one doing the most was Elinor, and even she was only marginally better than Beatrice. She lit up the Dark Knight to minimize damage to her side, but that was the most she could manage. Things might have changed for the better if she used her creation Figment, but the risks that came with that were far too great. Not only did she have no proof that it could work, but she would also kill all her comrades. That was the nature of her world, and for she never hesitated to use it. If it was necessary, in this situation it was a pointless act akin to tying her own neck.
ということだ、ハイドリ。そろそろ自ら出張ってこい。
Am I the only one still remembering there is Wilhelm? Let's go fire with fire.
部下の影に隠れるのがお前の波動でもないだろう。それとも、すべてが屍にならねば、墓の王は気が入らんか。
Then it shall be so, he added as he spread his wings and chanted.
Initium sapientiae, cognitio sui ipsius, nihil dicere amanti.
The obsidian tables closed and Funks instantly readied themselves for whatever was to come, but nothing seemed to have changed. As they began to think Ludwig had failed, his arcane suddenly bore its fangs. Rosalga's legs became as salt and shattered. It was her fingers, arms, shoulders, all of it decayed and crumbled. How dare he go after her, that bastard? The abnormality spread in about a blink of an eye, for the extent of it was different for each one of them. All of their bodies were falling apart. Even the horde of the dead that made up Gladsheim were starting to shatter at one side. Tanks and aircraft began to rust and fall to the ocean while disintegrating, and to make it worse, the speed of this disaster only continued to increase. It was total collapse. Annihilation was drawing near.
ほう、興味深いな。そんな真似もできるのか。
For Reinhardt was still as composed as he sounded. A crack had appeared on his cheek. It didn't do more than that to him, but evidently not even he was free from the effects of the mysterious attack. That alone made it abundantly clear just how powerful a magic Ludwig was exercising. But what exactly was its nature?
これは時間かな、カール。
さよう、メトシェラが歩んできた夜を高速で回している。あまりに早すぎるため自覚するのは難しいが、体は常に正直だ。
The Obsidian Table sought immortality and indestructibility, and that very fact meant they had yet to achieve it. At that point in time, not even Reinhardt was an exception. For death didn't come to them easily. They would obviously break if they were forced to bear a great burden, such as an age's worth of time.
1500、800、900。ああ、今2000年を超えましたな。そろそろあなた以外は限界だろう。まだ肉体面にしか作用しておらぬから耐えているが、哀れにも察してしまえばどうなるか。
自死衝動に潰されるか。確かにそうだな。気づけば魂が朽ちるだろう。まあ、私以外の者に部下を壊させるわけにもいかんのは事実。
Reinhardt stroked his hair upward. His hand momentarily hit his cracked cheek, and after he moved it away, the injury had vanished as if it was never there in the first place. He then glanced at Mercury, who didn't seem to be affected whatsoever.
とはいえだ。私は欲張りなのだよ、カール。こうして戦に臨む以上、完全なる勝利を求めている。
というと？
つまり、先に一度話しただろう。メトシェラ殿を制すにあたり、取るべき方針についてだよ。
Either force him to adhere to your own logic or make him scatter with all the might we have.
なるほど。ここであなたが前に出れば、後者を具現するしかなくなる
な。
もう一つは、ふさわしきものにやってもらうというわけか。
Mercurius acknowledged the idea, so they called as the commander of his legion gave the decision.
そうとも。完全に勝利するとは、ことごとくに勝つということ。私は両方取る気なのだよ。すなわち。
どうした？未だ腰を上げる気にはならんのか、ハイドリヒ。お前もだ、水銀よ。私を消したいなら、自ら舞台に上がるがいい。
Upon hearing Ludwig's words, the two leaders of the Obsidian Table formed a wry grin, which seemed to imply that they really want to do as he said.
その前にやるべきことがあるだろ
う。まずは恋敵と雌雄を決するのが筋ではないかな、メトシェラよ。
何
He found the words strange, hard to comprehend even. They made sense, but what they implied was impossible. Ludwig knew full well who he was referring to, but he couldn't see the meaning of acting on his words. The many questions had already perished, and even the off chance that he did survive, there was nothing he could do, so...
一体何を言っている?
The moment he assumed he'd just misheard the words, a sudden storm of night-rending thorns erupted toward him. I destroyed him, twisted him apart, tore him to pieces, and pulverized him. Then I threw him away. If I had anything that could be called a fighting side, that was the best description for it. I trampled my enemies with all my might, leaving them as little more than undignified gore. I knew pretty damn well that I was being crude and brutish. I mean, by that point, I had a general idea for how normal people viewed things. What of it for? Sure, I didn't give a shit about society's standards, but I wasn't purposely trying to stray away from them either. If anything, it just so happened that my style fit a certain template. It definitely wasn't like I was just some little brat trying to look cool by doing bad things. This was just a matter of what I preferred and what I was good at. Going wild simply felt right to me, and I couldn't do things another way. It was something that had become a part of me during the nights I'd spent hunting cats and dogs. I believed it was normal for people to be good at what they liked doing, and the reverse was true as well. I was good at fighting with my style, and it gave me the best results, so I naturally came to enjoy it. I especially liked warping the max of guys that pissed me off like the fucker before me. Hell, I could say I pretty much was born to do it.
Yo, またあったなクソったれ。ぶち殺してやるから面貸せ。
With a roar, I unleashed a volley of stakes that pulverized his damned darkness. Thanks to that, the guys at the back were safe from the brink of death, if only barely.
ああ、なんだてめえら。ちょっと見ねえ間にどいつもババッチクなりやがって。みっともねえから下がってろ。あの野郎は俺がやる。
I had no intention of handing him over to anyone else. I had to return the favor. And fuck, we just had a pretty damn weird connection, so the battle was mine to fight. I wouldn't take a no or even give them the time to offer it. I broke the approaching jaws with my fists. They blew away my arm, but it instantly regenerated. The scene before him filled him with shock. As it was, his face was hard to read, but the confusion was still pretty damn obvious. It was a testament to just how taken back he was.
疑問の理由は分かってるぜ。だがわざわざ教えてやると思うか、間抜け。せいぜいああでもないこうでもないと考えながらよ。てめえはクズになるまでぶっ飛べや。
Nice. An eruption of deadly thorns, four of them covered in briar. I spun as I turned myself into a bullet and flew toward him, breaking his defense like a battering ram and charging at him. It wouldn't have been a proper battle between us if it didn't start with this punch. I tried to get it in 3 times already and failed, but I was sure this baby would land properly. I mustered all my strength and punched him with just as much. My fist finally reached his dumb fucking face. From the feeling alone I could tell that it was heavy. He didn't sidestep it or take it just for some sloppy act. In exchange for landing that one, about half my body was eaten away by the dark fangs. But like before, the wounds instantly regenerated. Even if the damage was fatal, it didn't mean shit to me. The gold souls were flowing to me and becoming my flesh and blood. This was the reward and blessing I'd received from Lord Heydrich, and I was told it would last for that single battle alone. The Legion of Gladsheim was refilling me with a limitless supply of life. That was the sole reason why I was in such a good state despite almost dying back at the cathedral. All my wounds disappeared instantaneously, and all of my attacks were the strongest I could master. Because of that, I didn't even need any forethought. I burned all 8,000 souls I could store with every hit I made. Both my defense and offense were on a whole different level. Sure, it was limited reward, but I couldn't help but savor days of glory that would eventually be fully mine. After all, this was what it meant to be the Einherjar. It was the privilege I'd get if I was summoned to Valhalla and became a part of Lord Heydrich. That was probably the reason why Zamil had needed all that many souls. She'd been planning to become an immortal champion since the very start, so she'd always rejected the souls she'd found trifling. She wanted to have a truly glorious formation made up of only the most worthy elite. In her mind, bringing pathetic souls to Gladsheim was an act of disloyalty, and it was so like her that I could only laugh. For I wasn't diligent enough to do what she did. I knew a thing or two about pride, so I do my best to meet their expectations. The process of linking me to Glassheim took a while and made me late, and that was exactly why I had to make up for it by stealing all the most juicy scenes.
図に乗るなよ、恥知らずのまがい者が。どれだけハイドリヒの支援を得ようが、貴様の器が浅いことに変わりはない。
だったらその浅い野郎とごぶってる今のてめえは何なんだよ。
We passed each other and dealt immense damage. My side was pierced while his arm was blown away. The parts that were ours mixed and whirled in midair and vanished into the emptiness with a sound reminiscent of a death wail. The moment after, just as before, we both regenerated.
貴様ごときがなぜ私に触れられる？そこにどんな神秘があるという。
Oh, he's getting into the logic part here. You know, what Heydrich and Mercurius were talking about, right, Karl?
永遠の夜などと壊れた理想を追っている貴様ごときに。
だから教えるわけはねえと言ってるのがこのボケが。
He'd obviously realized that I had access to Glassheim's soul supply, but that alone was enough to harm him. As much as I resented the fact, it was true that my caliber wasn't that great. If slapping 8,000 souls on this guy was enough to damage him, Schreiber would have been able to do it too, so that couldn't be it. If Methuselah could only be broken by quality, quantity and status, the only one among us who could be capable was Lord Heydrich. It'd be a battle of the kings, which wasn't something I could mimic. Of course I couldn't pull off Machina's feat either, as one who wished for an eternal life, Wilhelm Ehrenburg could never house the concept of the end. You wonder why I could hit him then? Like I said, I ain't telling! At least, not until we get to the point where this guy realized it. Not until we get to the point where I get to ridicule his dumbfounded face and punch it real good.
痛えか。痛えだろ。嬉し涙流せやこら。
I never sought anything high and noble from battle. I punched and broke the max of anyone I wanted and found it all refreshing. Zikyle and all that shit. Because of that, I never held back. I went in with all I had and killed with all I was. That was my very own form of chivalry, my path as a knight. My brothers hold with more malice than a machine gun that moved down thousands. By that point, they were more like a forest ravaging the Arctic. Anyone looking from the side would see nothing but madness. I didn't activate the Knight of the Bloodstained Roses. Don't misunderstand, foe! Like I said, I was going all out. I was underestimating him and I had proper reasons for keeping it sealed. My main purpose behind unleashing the Knight was to drain my surroundings and grow stronger, but since I had Glassheim's support, I didn't really need it. Additionally, making the Knight dancer while fighting Ludwig was too risky. I was confident that it wouldn't be used against me, but still, with its main purpose already fulfilled, I just had no reason to unleash it. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I know I was saying fire with fire, but yeah, what he's saying here completely makes sense. Probably would make things worse in the end. If we were completely alone and also had not been supported by the Glassheim, then we could talk, but yeah, anyway. The third and biggest reason was the fact that unleashing Helga's will wasn't a good idea given the situation. What situation? Like I say, I ain't telling. Just know that I had to wield this attraction with all my power, while at the same time doing some pretty delicate work. Basically, if I let out the core of my mind, everything could go to shit. And so I had to keep Helga in check. I had to take the fuel from Glassheim and use it to wield her power without restraint, while also doing my best to prevent her from waking, and I tell you, it was like walking a tightrope. I'd lead this battle to our victory. That was the conclusion I sought, and I was far more serious about it than ever.
できるものならやってみせろ。私はメトシェラ。
And?
あまねく貴様らノアの長だ。子に遅れを取る道理がどこにある。ましてや貴様のような奇形になど。
I had no reason to let him finish a line that probably pissed me off, so I didn't. I bent all the muscles in me while making my body twist like a drone bow. I forced all my power into my next strike. I want to become a blood-sucking demon, a murderous, tyrannical, aesthetic, and immortal phoenix of the night who rebirthed himself by draining the lives of others. If they thought my craving was stale and that I had mistaken upbringing, I didn't need his lineage or name. Barricade was the true path I had to take if I wanted to be myself. My roots returned to ash. I'd done it once and I'd do it again. Dark clashed in the air. The impact produced no light, but our eyes could see a flash of the abyss. To my mind it was good enough to be called a spark. The shattered darkness was taken by the gale and flew away like stardust riding the storm. The still spinning eternal light was now focused exclusively on me. I had no idea how many thousands of years had passed by that point, but it didn't mean shit to me, even if it was over a fucking million. I would revive endlessly, even if my limbs crumbled and become dust. That was the vampirism I sought. I couldn't die. I want to become something that lived on, no matter how many millions or billions of years went by. And even the stars or the universe vanished. Another clash. The screams we unleashed didn't even constitute as words. Still, the sentiment within them was obvious. Condensed murderous intent. We broke and shattered each other, intertwining but not mixing. We bore our fangs with pride, as if fighting over who was the real darkness, the Methuselah among us. Damn right was me. I was a true ancestor, and he, whatever the fuck he was, a mere eyesore. As for taking the fragments of sound torn and ripped apart, we fought boisterously while drawing a helix in the tracking atmosphere. We traced the huge tornado that had happened, appeared, and sped upward, high enough to break the yoke of gravity, and still accelerated, becoming faster with every moment. Defeat wasn't an option. The only one who'd ever won against me was Lord Heydrich. That was true at the time, and it wouldn't change for all eternity. To make sure that it remained so, I shattered him, regenerated and broke him as I reached for victory and tried to pick up the scent of blood. Claudia, where are you? Here we go, he's chanting some bullshit again. That was when it happened. What the fuck? Ludwig lost his temper and chose to use his arcane powers. The entire sky around us was shrouded in a dark aurora. It was a scene of overwhelming ruin, and it felt like a sign of supreme calamity, like a tsunami that could sink an entire continent. I was certain this harbinger of cataclysm was the ace up his sleeve, but that didn't mean shit to me. I just snapped my fingers and grasped the proof of my victory. Ludwig absent-mindedly looked down the shining briar growing out of him. He clearly had no idea what just happened. Of course he wouldn't. This was a phenomenon that happened out of his sight. He was just unlucky, and that was exactly why it was such a strong trump card for me.
いや、それとも全部必然か。
Who knows? A set of minor details stacked and made up a flow, attaining irreversibility as it headed toward the only possible conclusion. That was probably what Mercurius would say about it, and it was easy to see Ludwig as an idiot who just got what he deserved. After all, it wasn't impossible to expect this turn of events.
今てめえを貫いてるのは俺の血だ。クラウディアに吸われたもんだよ。
He seemed to have finally realized. This was all just a blood pact, despite donning the skin, the logic of a vampire he took it lightly, which was what led to his defeat.
俺はクラウディアに血を吸われた。ほんの人舐め程度のもんだが、それでもあいつの中に混じったのは間違いねえ。
True that. No matter how little of the kiss in the dark she took, the fact remained that she'd taken my fangs inside of her.
もちろん単にそれだけじゃ意味なんかねえ。だからどうしたって話だよ。ここで何より大事なのは、てめえがクラウディアを崇め立てまつってるっつうことだ。
The light, the peerless sun, he'd defined Claudia as such, and that interrelation became permanent. This was just the result of all his smack talk about darkness being powerless before her.
わかるかおい。吸ったもんと吸われたもんには血のつながりができるんだよ。てめえがあいつに、あいつが俺に、縦一本の線が通った。
First, through Claudia, I was able to counter Ludwig's attack. That was the logic behind why I could match Methuselah, who'd completely dominated the rest of the obsidian table. In a sense, I was fighting with Claudia's powers. She was also one of the reasons why I didn't use the Knight of the Bloodstained Roses. If Helga's consciousness had become too strong, the already famed blood pack would have been cut off. She hated Claudia, so she'd probably have done it with glee. Love only me, look only at me, you don't need anyone else, and all that jazz. And if that happened, I wouldn't have won this perfectly winnable battle.
だから俺はてめえがマジになる瞬間を待ったのさ。
He'd called me shallow, and I had no idea just how much depth he had himself, but...
その時だけは芯が覗く。誰でも同じだ。変わらねえ。
People knows wielding magic and even gods were no exception.
そこを内から一突きされりゃ、どんな化け物でもイチコロだろうが。まして闇に対する光ならな。
With that, I revealed everything I had to, which meant the end of his farce was near. I only went and explained the situation to set up what would happen next. There was a line I really fucking won't tell him, so I raised my face ready to make him cry real good.
さっさと俺の女を返せやこら
With those words, I sunk my fist in his face, blew him away, and retrieved Claudia. And then...
見事だ注意。ならば次は私の番だな。ロンビヌフランゼテスタメント。
Golden light overflowed as the universe compressed into a spear materialized itself within Lord Hydrich's hands. This was the true, unquestionable manifestation of divinity, and it needn't be said where its tip was directed. Methuselah, the one said to be the last arcane, I'd gotten the better of him through logic, and Lord Hydrich would blast him away with sheer power. Hegemony, kingship, the unwavering love of destruction. He'd absolutely outdone the enemy on both possible fronts, and truth.
完全勝利だ。いざ参るぞ。受けるがいい。
Not even millions of knights could withstand the direct, all-destroying power. It was a lie that seemed to purge the old law and give birth to a new world. Like a waterfall, the golden torrent washed away all the darkness. Ludwig screamed as he faded. He was no longer Methuselah. Everyone present felt the ancient arcane evaporate due to the blinding strike from the holy lance, leaving behind nothing but simple darkness. Eventually, there would only be a shapeless, untalkative unremarkable aspect of nature. With this, the mysterious events that continued since Katyn would finally get some closure. Indeed, all that stuff was clearly over, but... A hand reached out from the light and grabbed my shoulder, or rather Claudia, who I held within my hands. The scene was earth-shattering, just how unbelievable it was. This guy was still alive not only after getting done in by me, but even after taking direct hit from Lord Heinrich's holy lance. Then again, he might have already been dead, he just had the will and tenacity to let him reject the myths, regardless. Let me tell you, that was the first time something other than Lord Heinrich or Mercurius made me feel fear. He then mastered his strength. With power that greatly surpassed my expectation, he pulled me and Claudia and sent us all tumbling through the air. We began falling. Intertwined, the three of us were at the mercy of gravity and fell toward the surface. We eventually broke through the clouds and I opened my eyes to see a vast cold wasteland, an expanse of snow and ice. I could only assume that it was the paradise he once talked about, but I didn't really give a shit. We were extremely high and went down stupidly fast. There was no way Claudia would survive the fall. I'd experienced fear for the third time in my life just a mere moment ago, and then came the fourth. Yeah, it scared me. The idea that I would lose Claudia made me tremble with fear.
これはなかなか飽きさせぬ展開だな。いや、むしろ王道というべきか。理屈で敗れ、力で敗れ、しかしまだまだ負けていない。最後に残ったのは男の矜持。愛しい女を手にするため、いざ魂の決闘に臨んでみせると。つまり我々の見立てが甘かった。取るべき勝利は2本にあらず、3本あったというわけだ。
Mercurius looked down the scene while executing an air of responsibility similar to that of a member of the audience in theater. Even if the situation was dire, he'd said whatever he wanted despite not doing anything to help. This attitude of his was one of the reasons why he was so disliked by many.
さて、ならばどうされる？援軍でも送りますかな？それとも皆で見守りますかな？
必要ない。
After responding to the nonchalant magician, Reinhardt undid the formation of his lance and threw a glance downward before continuing his words in a dispassionate tone.
我々のなすべきことはこれで終わった。あとは彼らの個人的な問題だろう。故に引き上げだ。ベイも生きていれば戻ってこよう。完全勝利の是非についてはこのまま委ねることとする。今さら部外者の立ち入りは下世話というものだろうし
な。確かにそれはその通り。
Mercury seemed somewhat disappointed, but it was hard to tell how serious he was. Before they left, as Reinhardt ordered, he gave them another question.
時にどうでしたかな、メトシェラは。
He'd asked whether Reinhardt was satisfied. Mercurius's tone contained a sentiment impossible to measure through words alone.
悪くない。しかし予想を超えるものではなかった。事実、
As expected.
基地も未だに晴れん。前座としては文句のない出来だったがね。部下のタガを締める役には立っただろう。今後己がどういうものと相対するのか、怒りの人はどんな地平を目指しているのか、こたびのことでそこを感じ取ってもらえれば それで良いのだ。つまり、おおむね有意義な戦だったと表現できるな。
それは長女。ありがたきお言葉、妙理に尽きる。
Choose on to the next one. Then the next one. The end of the phenomenon they both fixed their eyes upon was far off in the distant horizon. They were already spending far too much time in this scene. They had to keep moving, never stopping no matter what.
ではひとまず戻った後はクリストフの問題を片付けますかな。
そうしよう。あれはあれで私に必要な男だからな。
Reinhard looked down his dying subordinates once more. His eyes were filled with love, and he blessed their future with not by sincerity. He was dreaming of the ideal land of strife he would arrive upon after his eternity of destruction and battle. And with that being said, we'll actually end the episode here. We'll see how the fall goes in the next one tomorrow. For now, hope you enjoyed. If you did, consider liking the video as per usual. That's always appreciated. If you are new to the channel, subscribe. We'll play probably some more of games like the irae in the future. If you're into that stuff, well, stay around. That's always also much appreciated. Tell me what you thought of the battle. And there is Twitch, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, that's all of them in the description. If you're into that stuff, you can follow me there as well. For now, as I said, let's end it. Hope you enjoyed. I wish you all a wonderful day, and hopefully I will see you tomorrow as well in the next episode. Bye bye.